Hi, everybody. This is Josh Mansky with the Corn Belt Newsletter Podcast. I have the privilege today of having the Lobe Rangers as my guest today. Uh, why don't you guys start out with some introductions? We got the three members of the Lobe Rangers. Matt, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, Josh, I farm south of Algona, not too far away from your family's business, and corn and soybeans, and graduated from Iowa State in 2001 and did a little sales, part-time farming, and for about 5 years. And then I started farming full time. And we've been using a lot of these conservation practices. I was always curious in a lot of conservation practices, through my whole career, but really got started into the cover crop, strip till, all that kind of stuff in 2011. And I always tell people corn was $7.48 when we decided to start strip tilling, because we knew that we were going to have to really watch our nutrients more for when it got to be half price, and which it did, in that time period. Served 2.5 years on the state soil and water conservation committee. Helped start a peer group for soil health minded farmers, and now I'm sitting here as a member of the Lobe Rangers.
Cool, cool. James.
Yeah, James Hepp. I farm up in Calhoun County. I'm just west of Fort Dodge, half an hour. First generation farmer with my wife and three kids. I'm also a soil commissioner for my county. Graduated from Northwest Missouri State back in 2013 with a degree in ag. Did a lot of work in crop insurance. Currently, right now, I farm full time and kind of work in that realm. And always been passionate about just doing things better, conservation, strip till, no till, in season application stuff, foliar. Always trying to push the needle. Was lucky enough to meet these guys, and one thing led to another, and it got out of hand really quick. And here we are. We're the Lobe Rangers. So
Yeah, we're definitely, I want to get into that origin story. Zach.
So Zach Smith, 46 years old, from Winnebago County, near Lake Mills is where I live, and farm between there and Buffalo Center. 2002 graduate of Iowa State with a degree in agronomy. I spent most of my career working in ag retail in various roles. I was a chemical salesman for about 11 years, and then did a 7-year stint as a Pioneer seed dealer, and had my own, agronomy business essentially with that. I started into the conservation space in 2011, same time Matt did. Started farming about that same time, part-time, with some of my dad's acres. And then in 2021, I had a customer offer me the chance to take over his farm. I had enough to do it on my own, and I was ready to not be serving farmers every day all the time, being on call. And so I started farming, and I'm really passionate about the same thing these guys are that they've talked about. And I'm very pleased with finally having a group that feels like we're starting maybe to move the needle a little bit on the conversation around this space. And I couldn't be prouder with what we've accomplished in the last 3 months.
Well, let's kind of get into that. I think people find that interesting for those that aren't aware of you. How did you guys come to know one another? And then what's the origin story behind this whole thing?
I'll start that one off. I was appointed to the State Soil and Water Conservation Committee in 2021, and I left in the fall of 2023 very frustrated at just, I felt like the farmers on the committee, their voices really weren't heard. We more or less rubber stamp, a bureaucracy of stuff, and approved or disapproved stuff that really wouldn't matter at all to conservation. And I never thought that the farmers' voices were really heard on that. We never really had a chance to talk to any ag committees or just be really highlighted. We were some of the top farmers in the state doing some of these practices. They had to have an equal amount of independents, Democrats, and Republicans on this committee, and left really frustrated in the September, I think it was, of 2023. And just at the lack of action, like I said, I knew Zach Smith was making a few waves on Twitter, and I knew him from a few years back when we were both active in Farm Bureau. And I gave him a call, and we effectively did karate in the garage that day. I think it was a 2-hour long conversation on what we were frustrated with. And then later on that fall, seen a guy with a massive high-speed disc and bean stubble, and I knew what was going to happen. It was going to start blowing within a few days, and just kind of laughing about it, and sent a Snapchat to about 8 different guys, and that knew conservation and talked about it. Zach was one of them, and later on in the day, it started raining, and mixed myself a Crown and Coke mid-afternoon, and I'm like, I should make a group on Snapchat. People are always talking about starting a group or starting whatever, and I was really frustrated at the lack of conservation I was seeing, and started this group called the Strip Tail Mafia. Went in the house, made supper for the kids, and came back out at about 9 o'clock, sitting in my shop, and it grew to 16 people. And by morning, it was around 25 people that were in it. And that just evolved into a group of farmers talking about this space that we're in, trying to do better farming practices. And we always wanted to take it to the next level. We'd have different meetings, how could we influence policy? How could we help get farmers on board to doing more stuff? Where's the future going to lie with all this? And, it needed some farmers. It ended up being Zach and James and I. James was brought into a group by another farmer that was in the group earlier. James was one of the later guys that came to the group. And we ended up here in about January putting this group together, launching a social media campaign, talking about all these issues. And it just kind of grew from there. So when did we start? Right around February, making our videos, guys?
I think it was March.
Yeah.
March of this year.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. But the your guys' group essentially started with the Strip Till Mafia. Is that right, Matt? And then it's
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
evolved
Okay.
into the three of you now being the Lobe Rangers. So of course, for those of the listeners who are outside of the Des Moines Lobe, does somebody want to explain what the Des Moines Lobe is?
Yeah, so I'll do it.
Yeah,
The Des Moines Lobe is a geological formation that kind of makes a tongue shape or a U-shaped trough in the north central part of Iowa. It was formed by a glacier about 14 to 16,000 years ago. It came down and kind of flattened and created some beautiful black young soils that prairies grew up on and made super fertile over the next period of time. And then now we get to farm it, and so that's that name is where we got the Lobe part of our name from, and then the Rangers part was just we wanted something that would slap a little bit and get people's attentions. And James had the brilliant idea when we did our social media stuff to announce ourselves and then have a bullwhip crack that we that's our signature between on every video. It starts and stops with that, and people love the bullwhip. We actually had one of our super fans in Illinois send us all bullwhip cracks. So we are trying not to take our eyes out with them. They're kind of a dangerous deal, but
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, so that's where the name came from, and the tie to the landscape that we all farm on. We're all on the Des Moines Lobe, and that's the same landscape that feeds the city of Des Moines with the watersheds, the Raccoon and the Des Moines River basins that have caused a lot of the news. And so we're that's how we came up with it.
It's kind of a cool little origin story. Let's for some more background for folks as well. Let's talk about each of your operations and how you started to implement these conservation practices. Some of the positives, some of the negatives, some of the barriers to entry, even within your own operations. I know I can speak to ours. I mean, we started with a very small amount of cover crops. Well, majority of our operations down in Southwest Iowa. And we started with a small amount of cover crops, and now we've increased that exponentially. So I know, like, dipping your toe into certain practices, as we know, if you go whole hog, that can be kind of a risk to the entire farming operation. So I don't know, Zach, if you want to start with that, kind of talk about your operation, some of the things you've implemented and success stories or other, like I said, possible barriers to entry to doing some of these things, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, the biggest barrier to entry with all of this stuff to make these changes are typically dads and grandpas that stand in the way of not being comfortable with the change or being at a spot where they're like, I've been successful for 40 years. I had the same problem, but my parents did not want to make the change when I wanted to in 2011. I basically forced their hand. and had kind of a come to Jesus meeting with them on the porch about this time of the year in 2011. And I told them I was going to go buy a strip till bar. I was either going to, this is how I was going to farm, and I was going to do it either with or without them. And so it was kind of a standoff, but they decided to come along. And now my dad would say it's the best decision he ever made was to support me. And then they retired 2 years later. And, you know, that's the one thing we all have in common is we don't have another generation standing in front of us limiting what we can do. There's a lot of people, I think, that are, you know, that are our age or younger that would really like to do these things. But, you know, the older successful generation, a lot of times is what stands in the way. So my farm, I utilize strip till cover crops since 2014 with the covers. You know, all my nutrients are row indexed, either going on with the strip till bar. My nitrogen's all applied either with the planter or with a side dress application. You know, that's essentially what I've done. And then this last year, I've diversified. I'm corn and soybeans, but I've also added oats. I invested in the new oat plant up in Albert Lake, Minnesota, started by a fellow Iowan, Landon Plaguey out of Latimer, and really excited to have a third crop in the rotation. And yeah, I guess that's a little bit about my stuff.
James, let's hear about your operation.
So my story is a little different since I'm first generation. The family that I helped take over, they were very supportive, and they were already doing some strip till and doing different things like that. And I just kind of, like I tell people, we were almost to the top of the mountain, and I just kind of pushed it over. Because starting out, I didn't have anybody breathing down my neck. They were very supportive. So we started doing more and more strip till. Our tillage tractor at the time was wearing out, and I didn't want to have to put new tracks on an old cat, because you know what happens when you do that. The tracks are worth more than the tractor itself. And I got to looking, I'm like, geez, there's a lot of people planting no-till beans. Why can't we do that? So I started doing that, and then I noticed like there was zero yield difference. Sure, they might not have looked as sexy all summer long, but at the end of the day, the combine said they were the same. So I started doing that, and doing more and more of that. Cover crops I kind of got into on accident about my first year farming. My landlord ordered too much rye, and back then we were doing non-GMO beans and doing some cultivating and stuff, and you know how much fun that is. And we had 80 acres worth. And I'm like, sure, put her down, that's fine, we'll seed it. And that year, I'm not kidding, like, you always have water hemp, growing in that stuff. And where the rye was, like, it was like 5%. Like, it was night and day. I had people call, like, did you not spray, or like, what, there's such a difference. So I'm like, there must be something to this. So then I started growing my cover crop every year, doing more and more. And I just watched the amount of water hemp just go down, down, down. And so I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So that's kind of how I got, and now I'm doing multi-species and pushing the envelope on different covers. But that's kind of how I got going, kind of by accident, then out of necessity. And then, like I said, I started catching on, and it's just been a really, really good ride so far. But like Zach said, barriers to entry. I get a lot of people that want to do this stuff and they can't, whether it's a landlord or a family member, which is kind of frustrating. But hopefully we can work through that with some people. And biggest thing is just get out there and try stuff.
Matt.
Very, very similar. My earliest recollection of conservation was I was 10, 12 years old, moldboard plowing with a 1066 International, raising the plow to go through a waterway. Dad always had waterways all over. And then in college, I got had a really good friend, still is a really good friend, they were doing no-till, and I was always intrigued by it. I played around with that, 2004, 2005 time period. The first time I no-tilled, I failed absolutely miserably, but I learned a lot, and always just kind of gravitated towards that because I knew I could really get rid of equipment and be more efficient. And then 2011 was when we really went down the path of getting our first strip till bar, trying our first cover crops, and just realizing that we were trying to save money and be more efficient was always the name of the game for our farm. But then also knowing that sooner or later this stuff is going to come up, whether we have to do more or are we mandated, or however all that's going to work in the future, and so just trying to really learn it. And then, once you start finding out that water filtration gets better and the less equipment thing, and you're sitting here today, and it just made farming easier and better.
Well, we can get into, there's a bunch of different issues we can touch on today. I think one of them I'd like to touch on that you just were talking about, Matt, is I think maybe sometimes in people's minds you have conservation and profitability as a dichotomy. You have to choose one or the other. And what I think I'm hearing everybody say on the podcast here is that's not true, right? Your conservation practices you're implementing are making your farm, especially with the farm economy we're sitting in today, you're making the farm more efficient and more profitable as well. Matt, you want to comment on that at all?
I'd say, yeah, it's more efficient. It's I think the lack of adoption has to do a lot with peer pressure. I mean, the very group of farmers that, say nobody's going to tell me what to do, I can think on my own, are really worried what their neighbors think when they try something different. But then once they do it, you got to do it and try it to understand it, and it's just made things so much more efficient on our farm. We don't own the amount of equipment that we used to, and we're not maintaining, fixing sweeps and ripper points and diesel fuel and hours on tractors. It's just so much less than what it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to add to that too with the conservation stuff. A lot of the studies you see, they don't, from like different universities, they don't do a good job showing the whole picture. Conservation's not a la carte, it's a systems approach. So you'll see, it kind of frustrates me. You'll see studies from different universities and they'll say in 20 years, there's like a net 2 bushel loss on covers. Well, I'm like, okay, well, does that take in the fact that you quit doing tillage, you possibly reduce some herbicide costs, you might have stopped losing 1 to 2 tons of soil per acre per year. They don't figure that in. They just figure the cost in. And I think that kind of scares people and gives them all the reason to, nope, what I'm doing is working. I'm just going to let it be. So it's a systems approach. And I cringe when I say that because it seems like that's what everybody says now. But it's a start to finish. And if you do conservation well, it needs to be as important or more important than your actual corn and beans. Like the amount of time you put into seed and herbicide selections, you need to put that into your cover crop seed selection, your seeding. It starts with your residue management. Like do you have stock chopper or like stock rolls on your corn head? It's A to Z. You can't just hop in and, oh, I'm going to throw 40 pounds of rye out and save the world. It's a big system, and peer pressure is part of that too. And it is scary. I mean, there's stuff every year I do that I'm constantly learning, and the stuff I'm doing today was way different 3 years ago. So I can't even imagine what 3 years from now is going to look like. I mean, now there's a lot of people getting behind the covers. They're researching now. They're maybe coming out with different hybrid cover crops coming out in the future. So it's a pretty exciting time, but you just got to be willing to do it. And I tell everybody I'm a terrible example. I drink from a fire hose. If I do something, I do it in like 200-300 acre increments. And I tell people like there is no shame. Like take 10 acres. Like I have a few friends I've joked with. I said do the back 20. If it works, you can tell grandpa how well it worked. And if it didn't, your secret's safe. Like, I mean, I know it will work, but just hide it. They won't see it, but just, like putting anhydrous on, turn the dial down 20 pounds, wait till the combine. If it works, you can rub it in their face, tell them, look what we did. And if it don't, then your secret's safe. Just start small. We would never want anybody to jeopardize the farm. But I think we forget how much we're losing to begin with, because like I said, you don't get a check in the mail for Mr. Cover Crop. Like they say, well, does it pay? So I think that's what we need to do. Think big picture.
Zach, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, the economics were simple for me. It was all the things they talked about. The soil health, when we got into it, was not this space. There was no talk of regenerative agriculture in 2011, or very little at that point. Like as an agronomy guy, with my Iowa State background, like I like minimizing passes. I like banding nutrients, and strip till was a great way to do that. That's why I got in. And I started discovering the soil health stuff that came later. So it was not about feels for me. It was 100% about dollars and cents and time and labor. And it's been nothing but great. And like even, so we do participate in various formats with the government programs they have, like through NRCS on that stuff. That helps as well. And so if you can get parity yields, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the way it should be on some of these things with the payments that come through, but if they're there, we take advantage of them. And, but if they went away, I would still be just as passionate about this because they're just kind of a nice bonus that we get on top of what we're doing, which is better for our bottom line. It's better for the long-term viability of the farms that we have. So
I had a conversation with Jonathan Coppice out of the University of Illinois, and his comments have been focusing on land and soil, as kind of a starting place with some of these policies. I think to your point, James, like how do you quantify not losing a ton of soil off your farm a year? I think that's very astute. That's just very astute. So the goal of the Lobe Rangers, from what I can tell, has been kind of educational, right? We can start at a high level there, guys. The one thing it seems like everybody's doing as far as a farming practice between the three of you is strip tilling. Is that accurate? Everybody here strip tills?
Mm-hmm.
Why? For the listeners that don't have any idea what that is can somebody explain what that is and why that's been advantageous for everybody?
Sure. Yeah. So instead of doing conventional tillage where traditionally you would hit it with a ripper in the fall, and then in the spring you'd come back and hit it with a field cultivator and make it fairly black. Um, like us, the three of us, a lot of us will do fall strips. So we'll go in the fall and we'll make like a 8-inch wide strip literally with a knife, and then we'll band our fertility at the same time. So instead of having everything turned and black, there'll just be like maybe an 8-inch strip that's black. I've been experimenting with spring strip till also with coulters. So you can do it both. You can do it in the fall or in the spring. And that's the main thing. But like I said, instead of doing 2 passes, you're doing 1. A lot less fuel, a lot less oil changes, like Matt talked about, no field cultivator sweeps, stuff like that. But like I said, with strip till, it does take proper management. Like you probably don't want to just throw your junior high son in there and say, go strip till. Like you need to, there are days where it's like, let's wait till tomorrow. So it's more precise, but it's really not an issue when you think grand scheme. Like before you were doing 2 tillage passes, now you're doing 1. So if it takes you another day and a half, 2 days to do everything and do it right and apply your fertilizer, potentially lower your fertilizer rate, I mean, that alone would more than pay for your strip till pass, when you're banding versus broadcasting. So yeah, that's part of the system of it, but that's the gist of it, where we're just taking a small slice, and then it's warmer in the spring. The theory is, instead of like pure no-till for corn, because corn's a little more sensitive. I mean, beans will grow on the sidewalk, but corn's more sensitive, so they like the strip.
Yeah, and on the strip tilling, obviously you're stripping right where you need it, right where you're placing it, and of course from the studies I've seen, you're also cutting back on how much fertilizer you're having to use because you're putting it right in that strip.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all over the board. Some people use the same amount. I've heard some people that have had a 50 to 75% reduction and they're having the same parts per million, the same. So, I mean, that's big money they're talking. I mean, it's a big deal.
Have you
And it's
guys
worth
seen
the
that? Have you guys seen the strip till practice increase since you've started it, or not necessarily?
a little bit.
I think it's increasing in different spots in different parts of the state. Maybe, that it's spotty. It's all if you get the right neighbors and the right guys kind of doing it, then they kind of start following along with what the other neighbor does. You get up around that Osage, St. Ansgar area, there's a lot more adoption of this stuff than there is here. There's areas around Storm Lake that I see a little bit more adoption, but there are more people starting to buy strip till equipment, but it still pales in comparison to the amount of new rippers and field cultivators that we see go out. My local dealer that sells a lot of strip till equipment, they're sending it all over the countryside, versus your tillage equipment. It's getting more spread out locally from your local dealership.
Yeah. Let's pivot here. The strip till, I noticed that was a practice that all of you guys had shared. So I thought that was worth discussing because it's the benefits of the soil conservation element of it and the reduction, especially in fertilizer. I think that, especially with the way fertilizer costs are now and what we're going to be seeing probably come August, I don't know how many more sticker shocks we can handle, guys. So let's kind of go big picture here. Goal of the Lobe Rangers, as you guys came together, you formatted this truly a kind of a grassroots group. I mean, in its truest form, you came together with the strip till warriors became the Lobe Rangers in a way. Do I have that right, Matt?
Yep. Basically, somebody had to stick their neck out and try something. You know, we would talk about, well, should we do this or should we do that? And then finally, it's like, well, we'll just run with something and see what sticks. And you look back on our first videos, and they weren't that great, but we seem to be getting better and getting advice on how to, from successful people that can make videos and what to do to make them better. And you start figuring out your content and what gets you reactions, what gets you comments and stuff like that. So
Well, it certainly seems like obviously you have obviously the experience, and then the education aspect of this whole thing. It certainly seems every video that you guys put out, you're trying to educate the general populace. Is that kind of one of the main goals of this group?
Well, I'll take it. I'll take that one. So, our goal when we started this is that we wanted to influence meaningful change. And what meaningful change means is that, we wouldn't do this at something that would be cute to put on a sign or a billboard or a press release. We wanted to see conservation efforts that actually led to tangible things like decreases in the amount of nitrates that are actually ending up in the river. Like, that would be a goal. Now, the reality is that three farmers can't change that on their own. That's not going to be determined by the governor's race here, because whoever the next governor will be will still have a legislature that's not likely to move very quickly on these things. And so our goal as a group is to illustrate the level of change that's required. Most people don't know what that is. Most politicians, most people in agriculture don't like talking about, because it's an enormity. It's a huge distance away from where we're at today as far as the rate of adoption on the landscape that we have right now. The only way, in our opinion, we've tried to rely on voluntary change with the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy the last 13 years. We've maybe gotten 3 to 5% adoption specifically on the Lobe. And so, if we're being honest about things, voluntary is, in our opinion, has kind of been a failure. And if we want to see meaningful change, it's going to have to be getting people in the legislature that can work on policy that will actually result in that change being manifested. And it will look different than voluntary change. We can say that much to be true. So that's our goal, is to educate, to encourage people to run for office. It's not going to be us. We've had a lot of people ask us that question. We have zero interest. We'd much rather just do what we're doing, influence other people to go, and we'll be happy to help them along the way. But this is not something that's going to happen in 3 months. It's going to be probably a 2, 4, 6, 8 year strategy to get the things in place where we're going to make Iowa a better place to live.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that also. Our main deal is we're nonpartisan. Like, we will not pick a candidate. We're just presenting the information, and we're putting policy over party, and we're trying to get people to reach across the aisle. And conservation and water quality should never be politics. It should be, people to people. I mean, we all get affected by it. So, and that's what we're getting, and we're trying to get, and we're getting a lot of traction. People really appreciate us being nonpartisan. Like, we're not endorsing anybody, but we're endorsing the truth. So, and that's what we're going to encourage people to do, is seek out the truth. And if the person that's elected doesn't do it, then find someone that will run and do what you think is necessary for water quality and conservation.
Matt, do you want to add anything to that?
I was going to say, if I were going to add anything, we need to keep agriculture viable in this state. There's a lot of things getting put out there about alternative crops, which is great. We want to see more oats, more tomatoes, apples, green. I don't care what it is, but right now we've got ethanol, corn, soybean production, and let's just try to make it. Let's try to make it better with what we got. That's not going to change overnight.
I will say this much: there was a video that I believe Zach, you did, that was fairly interesting, I thought, when it came to people, talking about ending ethanol, those kind of things. Do you want to expound on that a little bit? everybody can jump in on that, but Zach, I point to you just because you made the video. It seemed like that specific information certainly seemed to garner decent amount of attention. And now I'm hitting Zach when he is obviously in a hole here. It looks like
happened in 2005. It was a crappy time. There was zero money involved in it, and you know, when ethanol came, everything kind of turned around. And since then, we've gone on to, I mean, it's become an absolute staple in the state's economy. We can't just flush it in the toilet as much as some people would like to. You know, ethanol has got a lot of negative externalities that come with it that we've ignored as an industry. Now that's starting to kind of raise its head. But there's a lot of people that think that we can just go back to grazing cattle across the entire state or raising alternative crops. The problem with those things is that even if that were to be true, you know, we've got about 8 million acres of corn demand, 7 to 8 million acres of corn demand that goes in ethanol. No one that's saying we should get rid of ethanol has a plan to replace the 7 to 8 million acres worth of revenue that the ag economy has come to, you know, be built on. And it would have catastrophic effects on the overall state's economy if we try to do a rug puller saying that. So we made a video out that essentially made both sides mad. We, you know, the people that make ethanol and raise corn were mad because we said, hey, you're going to have to do a better job doing it. We essentially called for responsible ethanol. And the people that say on the other side, like we should just grow apples and graze cattle and that'll fix everything. Well, you have to show us the math and bring the receipts on how that's going to pencil out without, you know, cratering property values in the state. So it's a balance, and that's the approach we try to bring with every video is, like James said, it's not partisan. We don't want to be siloed. We want to just, you know, look at our own reality, base that with the science that we know that to be true, and put out content that to our best of ability can try to hit the nail square in the head. So.
Well, it certainly seems that obviously based in Iowa, of course, it's been some of the stuff that you've talked about. Obviously, that's national policy too, but it seems like more state policy focus. Is that kind of where you guys are trying to make the argument more so on the state level?
It is initially, just because it's probably an easier lift for us to actually achieve things rather than at a federal level. You know, especially with what's going on with the concerns in the state now. It's a pretty hot button topic. It's probably, you know, it's one of the top 3 issues in the election, and so you know, the rest of the country in agriculture is not having the cancer crisis like what we're seeing here. So we're choosing to focus first with influence in our state. And then if we can build out to the federal level, there's a whole ton of stuff that we need, like the Farm Bill, to have included to really help us and back us at the national level. That's what drives all the, you know, a lot of our decisions is the Farm Bill policy. So but we're starting with Iowa first. And then, yeah, we very well, depending on how things go, could be lobbying at a lot larger scale eventually.
Have you guys been fairly surprised with the amount of attention you garnered thus far in a fairly short amount of time? And then a second part to that question, what has been some of the reactions both on you've hit on it a little bit, Zach, but on the positive and negative part of this whole thing? I guess we'll start with the first question is, are you surprised with the kind of traction you guys have gotten?
Yes,
Yeah.
big time. Absolutely shocked. We never would have guessed that this would go over like this, but there's really no farmers. Farmers are usually scared to talk about this kind of stuff, and there's no farmers really talking about, well, what's going to happen if we don't get farmers to adopt the practices of the nutrient reduction strategy? Like, that was a question I used to ask when I was on the state soil and water conservation committee in 21 through 23. You know, like what's the next phase of this? Because we're not getting the level that we need. So we've been talking about it, and it's absolutely amazing the amount of farmers that farmers I would never have guessed that are reaching out and be like, wow, you know, I never really thought of that. It's like, wow, you know, this cancer thing is real. It's affected, you know, our family too. Like, I don't want to be a part of the problem with this. Like, we need to know more what's going on, or it's, you know, I know a guy that's checking his tile lines right now, and we're comparing his practices kind of versus mine, and we're seeing roughly an 8 part per million difference in our practices. And he's like, holy crap, he's like, if my nitrate is higher than yours leaving the tile, that means that's money leaving the tile. And I want the money to stay on my farm. We have the public we really wanted to influence and get asking more questions. We have people reaching out to us all the time, and our first couple videos when you'd get negative feedback, that was the hardest one for me, trying to figure out what to do. But now it's really fun, actually. Like we like the people that give that respond with the really stupid comments. It's like, bring it on, buddy, because if they were to respond at around noon when we're recording this, by 2 o'clock, we're going to have allies on our side just going after it. So that's been really fun, for me to mature in that level, of how to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and on that note, James and Zach, reactions, positive and negative.
Yeah, so we've had both, obviously. It's kind of a funny thing we laugh about. We really have not had that many terribly negative ones, but the ones that have normally lead with saying that, well, we have some good points, but so that's always, we kind of laugh about that. Like they'll say, we don't like this, but the 2 or 3 other things you said we really like, yeah, you might have some good point to it. So they're admitting that we're kind of right. So a lot of the negative that we get is more maybe feelings directed. And like I said, nobody likes change. And not, the three of us are not perfect. We didn't invent any of this stuff. We're just, like I said, we're just preaching from the Bible of this conservation stuff. I mean, that's what we're doing. We did not invent this stuff. So it's nothing's personal. We're not trying to attack people. We're trying to educate, because the wolves are at the door, and there's people that want to legislate. Like Zach was saying, you can't just cut ethanol overnight. We can't just go all apples and cows. That's just not feasible. So like I said, we learned to deal with some of the negativity, and some people you could give them a brand new pickup and they'd still have a negative comment. So you'll never win over some of those people. And we talked with a guy that does a lot of podcasts, and he said, if you're not getting any negative, you almost wonder if you're not pushing hard enough. Like you should expect a little bit of negativity. And when he said that kind of clicked, because I didn't like some of the negativity either, but that kind of helped us. I think Matt's kind of in the same boat. So Zach's more of a honey badger than us. But.
Well, those of us from rural Iowa, it's one of those things you kind of like to be liked a little bit, right? I mean, you don't want to get people too fired up. Zach,
and we're trying to help people.
Right. No, I think that's the other thing is, sometimes people, things are said to get a reaction, right? And I think for you guys, this is practical experience of what's going on your operations in order to not only make the farm more sustainable, long-term, profitable, but also having those soil and water goals that you're having, come off of the farm as well, right?
Yep.
This is maybe a fun question. I don't know if you guys have been asked. So if you had 3 things you'd like to see implemented or done here, say it. So I heard Zach say, this is something that's going to take, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years. Let's just have some fun with this. Like in the next 10 years, what would be 3 things you guys would like to have seen accomplished by the time and effort you are putting into not only this online content, but you have we got to make sure we pitch the field day that's coming up, right? Is that the 25th of July? Is that a James
25th
farm?
Yep. It'll be July 25th at my farm near Rockwell City.
Right. So you guys, there's we're all busy when it comes to agriculture. A lot of things are going on, but your guys are putting in time and effort on this thing. So like, what would be, let's say 10 years from now, 3 things you'd like to accomplish?
Well, I think a lot of our stuff will be similar, but number one, to have a reduction in nitrate. And number 2, better respect for like soil, just taking care of the soil better. So maybe see a lot more no-till beans, a lot more strip-till corn. That would be huge. And I think number 3, it would just be a return to profitability on the family farm by using this stuff, because I think if we all do these conservation practices, we'll make a better world, literally, but then it'll make our farms more profitable also. So I think that's my 3 things, which we'll see what the other guys say, but that would be my 3 things.
Well, we need more. Everything that we're advocating for and what's in the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy, none of it is rocket science, Josh. I mean, in-season nitrogen application, we got to get to more of that to get the nitrate levels down, and we need more living roots. If you're in a museum of natural history, you'll see, these roots of the native prairie grasses that go down 10, 20 feet deep, some of this stuff. Like we don't have any living roots past the growing season. So you're thinking from mid-April till the middle of October of where the roots are really attached in the ground roughly. We need more of that, and then when I think about in-season nitrogen application, that's not rocket science. When you look back on the history of anhydrous, especially, the first anhydrous applicators were front mount cultivators on M Farmalls and 70 John Deeres. They did in-season nitrogen years ago, and we've really gone away from some of that stuff. So like those two practices alone, that Iowa Soybean Association and the Iowa Corn Growers Association, have data on that they're talking around 40-ish% reduction in nitrate with that. Like this, we're not pulling teeth here with what we're asking and what needs to be done in this state. It's going back to just the root of science and how all this stuff works.
And we would have agriculture taking accountability for the results of its actions. I think that would be a major step forward. We have had an attitude with, that we would say our industry leaders have set a poor example of deny and deflect about the realities of what's happening. And it's put us in this situation where we're kind of on our heels and the public is rightfully upset. And it feels like, though, that things are maybe starting. And so I think if we can be honest about things, this is not foo-foo dust. This is basic agronomy, that a lot of the people that are leaders in this industry have got the same education that we did at Iowa State. And it's just that, maybe the financial aspects of, running these big corporations, it isn't the best thing to maybe talk about some of this stuff. And so we need to build back in the negative externalities that we've ignored as an industry for the last 50 years, because it appears to have had some ramifications that aren't so great. And I think when we get back to a state of being accountable, I think it'll be better for our position with the general public and better for agriculture in general.
So you guys are 3 members of the Lobe Rangers. Do we plan on adding any more members to the face of the group here? Or are you guys kind of it?
I think if we can find people willing to step up, it's not easy to be a ranger. You have to kind of fit a special mold where you've got to have pretty tough skin. And there's a lot of people that I think maybe would be interested in doing it, but they have other businesses, or they'd be worried about, how would they be seen in the community or by landlords, or, there's a lot of risk. And it's not that we're without risk, but, we're fairly insulated on some of those things. We're pretty backed up by the important people in our lives. And, but if somebody wants to join us and they like what we're doing and they want to join the message, we would welcome new folks at any point. So,
well, for everybody out there that want to find some more information on the Lobe Rangers, where can they go? Where are your main platforms? Because there's about 50 of them, but where's the main ones you guys are focusing on?
Right now, we're Facebook and Instagram for the most part.
Do you guys have a website?
Yep. TheLobeRangers.com is our website. That's going to be getting reworked very, very soon to a new website. We also have our own non-for-profit started. We got our first donation James procured the other day. That'll be going in the bank account here shortly. So we are working on all that stuff too. So we're not quite a 501 yet. That is coming with the feds, but we're still waiting on our paperwork for that. But as far as the state of Iowa, we're a non-for-profit and would sure appreciate any help we can. It'd be nice to get on more social media platforms, but there's just 3 guys right now doing this, and there's only so much time in the day. I mean, we have families, we got to actually run our own farms. So, if we can get somebody hired or get the right person that likes to do that kind of stuff, that takes some of the workload off of us, that would be certainly great.
So is the 501c3 going to be, does it have an official name?
It'll be a 501c4 actually,
Okay.
and it's going to be the Lobe Rangers as well. So everything we do is under the Lobe Rangers title. And, and I don't think if we were like Farmers for Soil Health or something like that, I don't think it would be the same, as coming up with something more clever in our marketing that we just kind of stumbled across. So.
No, the name is definitely unique, of course, as somebody who was born and raised here in the Des Moines Lobe. Knew all about that when I heard what the name was, but it's for those like again that are outside of where we're at, they're like, what does that mean? So I'm like, yeah, we can kind of explain that. Well, guys, I've so appreciated the conversation here this morning. I appreciate your guys' time taking it out of your busy days. Zach, obviously on the road here, so I appreciate you taking time out, Zach, and James and Matt, appreciate it. And I guess the other thing we got, like one more thing, James, we got the field day at your farm there on the
Yeah.
25th. Tell us just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, speaking of support, everybody's invited to my farm. It's in 2195 250th Street, Rockwell City, Iowa. We're a mile and a half off Highway 20, and I'm a mile off Highway 4. So really good location. We're gonna hopefully get a lot of people there. It's Saturday, July 25th. Registration starts at 9. We'll probably be kicking off about 9:30. The Calhoun County pork producers will be grilling lunch. So if anything, you'll get a good meal out of the deal. We're working on some really good speakers will be coming and talking. We're going to talk about ourselves, who we are, why we're doing it, what our goals are, a lot of stuff we just talked to you about. And we have some more stuff that will be coming down the line soon. Hopefully we might even have some merchandise coming up pretty soon too, have some t-shirts. Maybe Zach can expand on that a little bit more, but field day, July 25th, Rockwell City. Look up on our Lobe Ranger website or Facebook. We'll have more information as it gets closer. It'll be a great event. Should be done by 2. We'll also have some equipment set in there, so some of the non-farm people can see kind of some of the stuff that the 3 of us are using to help promote soil health and water quality stuff. So it'll be a great time for everybody, from full-blown farmers to someone that lives on a cul-de-sac. Everybody's invited, and we'd love to have you there.
Well, you guys
The other thing I would,
Yep, go ahead, Zach.
the other thing I'd add is we're taking our and so if you go to our Facebook page, make sure you click on the link to RSVP, or on Instagram, the link in our bio for that. So
Your guys' videos, is there a certain day that those drop, or you just drop them as the spirit moves you?
As the spirit.
As the spirit moves. Perfect.
Yeah.
We're getting through. It took till, I always say it takes till almost the 4th of July to get all the farming done. So then trying to get the videos out when we launch this thing in March, going into the planting season and, spraying and whatever, and nitrogen application, it just sometimes it takes, we might have had a goal to set one up on a Saturday and it might have taken till a Monday afternoon, but the video should hopefully become more constant. So once we get a little less busy in the field.
And donations will help also, because it takes a lot of time. I mean, we're thankful we have Zach. He's really good at helping us edit stuff, but it's almost a full-time job. So hopefully the more we're out here, the better we get. So
You guys are definitely growing, like I said, not only on the social media aspect of it, website. Now you're having a 501c4 merchandise. So there's all the growing pains, guys. So keep an eye out on the Lobe Rangers. Again, Matt, James, Zach, appreciate your time today, and we'll do this again sometime soon.
thank you.
thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
This is Josh Mancy with the Corn Belt Newsletter Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.